Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you and welcome to All Saints Church on this wonderful evening. Just before we begin, I give one or two remarks, just some housekeeping. First of all, if you find yourself needing the lavatory, then if you pop out into the narthex, that's the inside bit that's not the church but not the outside either, and turn to your right, and the toilets are right in front of you. If you find yourself feeling unwell, then the little room in front of that is our isolation area, so please feel free to go for a lie down in there, or if the emotion of it is all too much for you as well. At the end of today's recital, there's going to be a collection for the Friends of All Saints Music, and hopefully you've also received a little gift aid envelope, which enables us to claim back some tax from the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So when you take your collection, if you could fold it up and pop it in that envelope and write your name and details on the front of it, that would be very much appreciated. It's wonderful to welcome you to All Saints Church at the heart of Northampton, and to those who are joining us online as well for tonight's celebrity recital, marking the completion of works to restore our great West organ. The historians tell us that, at least since the 18th century, pipe organs have occupied an honoured place in this church. Indeed, you can trace it back further to the records of the old collegiate foundation, excoriated by the Reformation and extinguished by the Great Fire, when the Guild of the Holy Trinity paid for musical accompaniment to the many services offered in the chantries and for the musical education of children. Times change, but our commitments remain the same and to the future. In the 19th century, the magnificent hill organ formed one half of what was known as the musical lions of Northampton, the other being the instrument housed in Northampton Guildhall, and which is no longer extant. But the instrument before us today, or behind you to be precise, is no less worthy of the name. Installed by J.W. Walker in 1983, it has served us faithfully, has been an integral part of our worship, has entertained us musically, and has been the platform for the education of more than a few young organists, not least tonight's recitalist, and our Director of Music, Jem Lowther, who has wonderfully managed this project to upgrade and overhaul the organ. Nearly 40 years have passed since the immense benefaction of the Bernard Sunley Charitable Foundation, who are justly famous for so many good causes that have attracted their support in our county and far beyond. I was leafing through the Jubilee Review a little earlier today and found schools, colleges and universities, law enforcement, healthcare and air ambulances, chapels, churches and cathedrals, scouts, armed forces, veterans, and even a mock-up of the flight deck of HMS Ark Royal at the Fleet Air Arm Museum at the Royal Naval Air Station in Yeovilton. It's just a little hint of the diverse things they've helped make happen. We're proud to be a part of your 7th decade, and very proud that you're here with us tonight to hear the organ again. The passage of years have left behind much dust and deterioration, and we are surpassingly grateful that a further generous gift from the Foundation is provided for these works, completed by William Drake Specialist Organ Builders and their expert staff, some of whom you'll find dotted around the church today, but especially we thank Jost, the director of the firm. As the programme for this evening relates, the organ now speaks with its full dignity. This evening we're delighted to welcome a recitalist who is in a unique position to interpret that full dignity for us and to put our instrument through its paces in what promises to be an exciting programme. Buried deep in the archives of the choir and our music programme are found the beginnings of many an exciting career, and it's wonderful to welcome back former chorister and organ scholar Richard Pinel, who is tonight's performer. Northampton bred, and a wonderful reminder of the tradition and practice of music education that extends far beyond All Saints that Northampton is famous for. Richard went up to Magdalen College, Oxford as organ scholar in 2002 and served as organ scholar subsequently of St Albans Abbey before his appointment as Assistant Director of Music at Windsor Castle. Today he is Fellow and Director of Music at Jesus College, Cambridge, and is a celebrated and award-winning recitalist at home and abroad, earning him accolades for his electrifying impact and tremendous verve. It gives me great pleasure to welcome him back to All Saints, and I ask you to greet him warmly as he opens tonight's performance.
excuse me while I just wire myself up, ladies and gentlemen. Good. It's a huge pleasure to be here this evening in this astonishingly beautiful church. I can honestly say that as a little 7-year-old boy who came and sang in the choir here, it was this building and the musicians who worked here that inspired me to become a musician. So it's a huge honour today to have been invited back to reopen this wonderful instrument. The programme this evening, I've selected pieces for various reasons. As will become clear, some of them are pieces that I actually learnt on this organ when I was younger, and others, perhaps more specifically, are suited to this kind of instrument. So you've just heard J.S. Bach's Monumental Fantasia and Fugue in G minor. It really needs no more explanation than the notes and the instrument itself. But this, along with the final piece in the programme, I learnt on this organ as a teenager. So it's rather fun to come back and play them here. Now that the organ has been beautifully restored, Joost and his team at William Drake Organ Builders have done an absolutely astonishing job. I don't think this instrument has ever felt or sounded as wonderful as it now does. It's often said that a bad workman blames his tools, and unfortunately, if there's anything wrong with tonight's recital, it is not because of the tools, it's because of the player. Every single note is just evenly voiced, and you just think something and the organ responds to it. So it's testament to some real master craftsmen at work, and I hope that you'll all enjoy the benefits of their great skill for years to come. Now on to the rest of the programme. The next piece is the hymn Ave Maris Stella by Nicolas De Grigny. This is a French classical piece. And organs of this style, kind of built in the late 1970s into the early 80s, they'd gone through a bit of a rejuvenation in the way that they were conceived. It was suddenly decided, quite rightly, that organs ought to be able to play the North German Baroque music to a degree of proficiency. So that's music by Bach and Buxtehude. And then a little bit later on, as I say, as we edge toward the late 70s, organ builders also decided to factor in the great French classical works. So there are many stops on this organ that are designed specifically for this kind of music. And so this next piece is designed to showcase those. So that's the kind of brilliant, exciting reeds, and a specifically French stop called a cornet, which is made by building up different pitches. So every note you play of a cornet, I think you've got 5 different pitches in octaves, and also other notes that just colour the sound. And it's a particularly kind of piquant sound. You'll hear that to best effect, I think, in the second movement, in the fugue, in the right hand. You'll see what I mean when you hear it. De Grigny uses the plain song hymn, Ave Maris Stella, and this piece is designed to be sung in alternatim between the organ and one or more singers. So it's lovely that we've got one of the choral scholars from All Saints, Christopher Trotter, who's going to sing the plain song verses between the organ versets. We then skip forward a couple of centuries to the works of Robert Schumann, his Canon in B major. Schumann, along with a lot of his contemporaries, took great interest in a new instrument called the pedal piano, and that is exactly what it sounds like. It's a piano that has an organ pedal board attached to it. If you think, before the days of electronic practice instruments, or even just the organist being able to rock up to the church and switch on the electric blower, he needed someone to either pump the air or an instrument on which he could practice that didn't involve someone else's help. So the pedal piano was conceived, and it's a beautiful instrument. It didn't really catch on, but Schumann was entranced with it, and he wrote quite a few pieces for this instrument. His publisher then said, well, look, if we're going to publish these pieces, they need to be playable on more than just a pedal piano, because nobody really knows what that is. So he agreed to have it inserted on the front cover that they could be played on the organ as well. This Canon in B major is a beautiful, charming, delicate little romantic piece that I'm sure you'll enjoy. And that's followed by a neo-romantic work, if you like, by the living composer Andrew Carter, who's based up in York. This lovely piece was written in 2 parts. First of all, the Passacaglia, which is a ground bass that is repeated, over which different variations are woven. This was written for the 90th birthday of the great English organist Francis Jackson, And then the fugue was added as a 100th birthday present for Francis. He's still going strong as well. After that, another modern piece by Simon Johnson. Many of you will know Simon. He was director of music here a little while ago now, and along with Richard Tanner, who I think is sitting downstairs. They were my first two organ teachers, so it's lovely to be able to pay homage in that way. This beautiful piece is part of the Orgelbuchlein project, and it's a setting of Psalm 128, Blessed are all they that fear the Lord, and it uses some of the kind of more delicate, tinklier stops in the organ. And then finally we have the finale from Louis Vierne's first organ symphony. This is a French romantic symphonic work, which I can remember hearing again as a little boy whilst I was in the choir here, and it was definitely one of those pieces that I always wanted to play. So it's great to be able to come back here and play it for you today, and I hope you enjoy this lovely instrument. Thank you.
The recital isn't quite over yet, but I thought that anything I have to say would be very anticlimactic after Richard's rousing French finale, which of course deserves nothing but rapturous applause. It's been a joy to hear so many varied and exciting sounds emanating from the organ this evening. This speaks volumes of so many things. The first, of course, is the quality of the instrument itself. An ability to play Bach has been a basic requirement of most organs for quite some time now. An ability to play the often neglected music of Bach's French contemporaries is quite rare outside of France itself. And indeed, many organs designed to play this kind of Baroque repertoire would not also be capable of playing what then followed, some very plush Schumann and some spellbinding contemporary works. It speaks to the instrument's amazing versatility. Perhaps I will concede that geeky excitement over specific styles of organ building is a bit niche, so let me make a broader point. That is, the immense value of the music program we have here and the really central place that this organ has in it. Every year, pandemics notwithstanding, I, like my predecessors in this job, do a road trip around Northamptonshire schools looking for bright and enthusiastic youngsters to turn into choristers. Those who do end up joining are given a first-class musical education here, completely free of charge. Many of these kids will spend a decade or more in the choir. They'll make some of their closest friends, and they'll likely find that the church has become something like a second home for them. They'll spend their formative years as part of a living and breathing musical tradition, for whom names like Bird and Tallis and Mozart and even Bach and De Grigny are daily companions. You heard one of our current choir members singing the plain chant verses just now. Just a few years ago, Christopher was an angelic treble and indeed was a finalist in the BBC Chorister of the Year competition. And he's now making great strides as a baritone with his broken voice. A few years back, as he mentioned, Richard himself was one of these choristers, joining at the age of 7 and spending some 11 years in the choir. This was the organ he had his first lesson on, taught firstly by Richard Tanner, who it's great to see in the audience here this evening, and then by Simon Johnson, whose contribution to the Orgel Bookline project we've just heard. So if you're wondering how Richard got so bloody good, while All Saints, of course, wouldn't dare take all the credit, we can at least say that it started here in this church and with this organ. He's certainly not alone in this. The same can be said of our preacher and the professional soprano soloist at our rededicatory mass last night, both of whom are, like Richard, graduates of the choral program here. Though I wasn't a chorister here, I also had a musical journey which started here. Age 11, I started learning the organ on this very instrument. I still remember my first lesson, sitting upstairs with the then musical director Edward Whiting, being talked through the basics of how the organ differed a bit to the piano, including the then mind-boggling concept that there was no sustain pedal and that your feet, not your left hand, usually played the bass notes. This was the first in a series of individual steps that led to a gap year as an organ scholar in the United States, to a music degree at university, and eventually to a career in church music and my appointment as the director of music here. It's a strange happening of fate that, as part of my role, I was placed in charge of a project to restore the very instrument that had first brought me into this world. Richard couldn't have played this recital this time last year, and not just because of the pandemic. The organ is played on a daily basis in support of our choral tradition, which includes choral evensong during the week in addition to Sunday worship. Like a car that's driven every day, after time, wear and tear will demand attention above and beyond simple ongoing maintenance. For some years now, it's been clear that the gallery organ was in need of its 100,000-mile service. Unfortunately, what lies underneath an organ case is infinitely more complex than what lays underneath a car bonnet. Indeed, by one estimate, the pipe organ was the most complicated machine mankind was capable of making prior to the invention of the steam engine. This organ contains over 3,000 pipes, the largest of which is larger than an abnormally large giraffe, and the smallest of which is no bigger than a pencil. The mechanism that connects these pipes to a wind supply, and then to the stops, and then to the keyboards involves, as I'm sure you can imagine, many more thousands of small moving parts. All of these need, at the very least, a good clean from decades of accumulated dirt. Some parts need closer attention, refurbishment, upgrading, or even replacement. Most crucially of all, these parts must be bound together into a coherent musical instrument rather than just a cold machine. In addition to the cleaning and overhaul of the instrument, this project has involved the installation of a new electrical capture system. This is a system which revolutionizes the organ in the same way that the iPod revolutionized music at the start of the millennium. The iPod may have all the same music as your CD collection, just as this organ contains the same pipes, stops, and keyboards as it did last year. Just as the music on your iPod is available at the touch of a button, free of the need to mechanically faff around with tapes or CDs, so too is the full spectrum of the organ's vast array of timbres now available at the organist's fingertips. This makes for electrical and colourful performances, such as Richard's performance of Carter's Passacaglia. For this work, we are immensely grateful to Jos and his team at William Drake Limited, to Gert, to Marak, to Julia, and also to Philip Shrimpton, to Andrew Dolby, and to Michael, the reed tickler. This project has involved being on site 5 days a week for pretty much half a year, and prior to this, many emails, spreadsheets, Zoom meetings, etc., etc. Their immense skill and craftsmanship, their persistence and professionalism has really brought this organ back to life, and we are really full of admiration for your work. Bringing this organ back to life has also been an amazing effort for our home team. Churches have had a tricky time over the pandemic, and the volunteer labour, which is its lifeblood, has really been stretched. The task of reopening the church for services, for private prayer, for our choirs, would have been task enough even without a big building project such as this one to factor in. I'm immensely grateful to everyone who's helped with what I call organ babysitting duty, in particular to Alison, to Jeff, to Tom, to Libby, and of course to Lawrence. This project wouldn't have even gotten off the ground if it weren't for Robin Shepherd and Father Oliver. I've been immensely grateful at numerous points during this project for the very active role they've played in ensuring its continued success. And nothing speaks more to that than the fact that the rector himself is mixing the live stream this evening. Finally, I'd like to end with a note of immense gratitude to the Bernard Sunley Foundation. This is the foundation that funded the building of this fantastic instrument in 1983, and who have also funded the works of restoration that took place this year. These gifts were made in memory of Bernard Sunley's wife, Mary Sunley, and of their daughter, Joan Tice. Joan Tice lived a very long and full life, marked by a quite extraordinary dedication to her charitable work, especially in Northamptonshire. It would be no exaggeration at all to say that she's left a very, very permanent stamp on this entire county. This church is but one of a very long list of local organisations who've been the beneficiaries of her immense generosity. As part of this project, we've commissioned a new engraved panel bearing her name to be placed alongside the original dedication plaque to her mother. We're immensely grateful as well to have in the audience with us tonight several relatives of both Mary Sunley and of Joan Tice. The greatest vote of thanks, however, is the sound of the organ itself. And with that, I'll leave Richard to bring our evening to a close with a work by the blind organist of Notre Dame de Paris, the final of Louis Vierne's first organ symphony.
Richard, we thank you a great deal and from the bottom of our hearts for, well, I'd say blowing the cobwebs off the organ, but Jost already did that. But for blowing them off us and for giving us an absolute treat this evening. I'm not going to detain you long, except to say thank you to the one person who couldn't be thanked a moment ago, and that is to Jem Lowther, our Director of Music. It's not an easy thing, I think, to take into your custodianship an instrument that you were first shown as a little boy. Indeed, I've seen the photograph. I don't think your feet reached the pedals, Jem. And to give it not only a new lease of life for right now, but to determine what it should be like for those who will play it as children now, and those who will play it in, hopefully, 50 or 60 years' time. So it's really for me to thank Jem for writing the long emails, for the exceptionally long days, long weeks, long months, maybe even a long year, I think, since we began this great journey, and for shepherding the whole parish to make it happen. And to that we're immensely grateful. Your mark is, I hope you've, graffitoed your name somewhere on the inside of that case. Yeah, I thought so. And we are immensely grateful to you for what you have done in making this happen. It remains for me only to wish you a very good night. Drive home safely. In the morning at 10:30, we'll be celebrating our Harvest Thanksgiving, which explains some of the collected bits and pieces on the steps here, and I hope the gaps will be filled up tomorrow with other things. But please do, as you go from this place, remember those who need feeding in our town tonight, and for all those who are less fortunate. Thank you very much for coming. I wish you a very good evening.